Hello students, today we are doing lesson 6.1, and as you notice my screen looks different today because we are doing graphs. So these are called coordinates in a plane. So most students have seen these before, but maybe you haven't worked a lot with coordinates and so you need a reminder. So we're going to be making a few graphs today. You need graph paper. Make sure that you have graph paper, and when you graph on a piece of graph paper, we're going to try to kind of stick to a 10 by 10, but at the beginning I'm going to teach you a few things about a coordinate plane, and so we're just going to do some kind of small ones. Okay, so first what I want you to do is just make two lines kind of crossing each other. We're going to talk about these two lines in a minute. Okay, this is making a coordinate plane right here. Okay, you can make it a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. I'm just going to try to make mine a little bit more even. Okay, so we're going to plot some points, like we're going to have a point here, or a point here, but we're going to do that later. First, I want to teach you some of the wording for a coordinate plane. Okay, this line right here is called the y-axis, and there are actually 7 things we're going to learn about on this coordinate plane, and you will need to label them on a test. Okay, this line, the one going horizontal, is the x-axis. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have drawn that arrow. Just know that that's the y-axis. Put it a little bit closer. Okay, y-axis. Okay, where the two meet, so right here, okay, that is called the origin. It's where all things start, right? The origin. And the origin, we'll talk about in a little bit, is what its coordinates are. Okay, so that's 3 things: the x-axis, the y-axis, and the origin. Now, the last things you need to know are the quadrants. So this is quadrant 1. And a lot of times you see it with the Roman numerals. If you put the numbers, that's fine also. Okay, this is quadrant 2. This is quadrant 3. And this is quadrant 4. So if you don't know how to read Roman numerals, it's fun to learn that if you don't know. You can just put the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, don't forget to put the word quadrant. So quad means 4, right? So that's why I have 4 of them. The first one is in this section. We're going to learn about y in just a minute when we do some plotting of points. But that's it for the 7 things you need to know. So we have, I'm going to erase this because it looks like it's the same origin one. We have the y-axis and the x-axis. We have the origin, and then we have the 4 quadrants. So those are the 7 things you will need to label on a graph. So make sure that you keep this. It's important that you know how to do that. Okay, now let's start a new one. We're going to plot some points. I'm going to start with the small one. So what I want is for this line to go down 10 boxes. Does that make sense? Hold on. Let me draw it, and then I'll explain what I mean by boxes. I think that's 10. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. See how I went 10 boxes? Okay, so on your graph paper, I want you to draw a line that goes 10 boxes. Okay, so that was 10 boxes down. I want you to also go 10 boxes across, but make sure that you've gone 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you put the line across. So we're going to go 5 this way, and then we're going to go 5 this way. Okay? So this is my coordinate grid, and now we're going to number it. Now numbering is very important. In fact, I'm going to put my pencil on my thing, if I could get it to work. Nope, maybe not. There we go. Oh, it is on skinny. Okay, so I'm putting it on the skinniest thing because this is hard to write. You have to write really small. Okay, 0, the 0 goes in this little corner right here. And then when I start numbering, you're going to number on top of the grid line. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and this one is actually 5, but I guess you don't need to write the 5. Okay, so do you see how I wrote them? They are on top of this line right here. Oops, did not mean to erase. They are on top of this line right here. See how the one goes through that line? So you don't want to put the numbers in the spaces of the boxes. You do not want to do this. You don't want to go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not where the numbers go. The numbers go on top of the line because the lines are the numbers. Okay, so now we're going to go up. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. See how I put them on the line? And then when we go to the left and down, these are going to be negatives. So we're going to go -1, -2, -3, -4. I wish very much so that I could teach y'all in person, because every year that I teach this, I walk around and I make sure that kids are putting the numbers on the lines. It's very important to getting your numbers correctly. Okay, I don't know why these numbers turn out so light. I must not have been touching very hard. Okay, so that's how you number a coordinate plane. These are called coordinate planes or graphs, either one. Okay, now we're going to practice on graphing ordered pairs. So an ordered pair has two numbers. It has an X and a Y. Okay, those are going to be numbers in a minute. So remember, this was the X-axis, and this was the Y-axis, and that's how I'm going to decide where to put numbers. So let's go ahead and do an example 1. I'm going to change to blue. Example 1. We're going to graph 2, 1. Okay, and so when I'm graphing 2, 1, the 2 is going to be my X and the 1 is my Y. So I'm going to go across on the X-axis. I'm going to go over to 2. So see the 2 right here? I'm going to go to 2, and then I'm going to go up to the 1 on the Y-axis. So here are my two numbers, 2 and 1. So I'm going to go up and right where those lines cross. Now see why I had to put the numbers on the lines? Because that's where I'm putting the dot, is on where these lines intersect. Okay, so that's my example 1. That's all I have to do is graph 2, 1. Okay, let's do example 2. Is going to be graph, I'm not going to write graph again, -3, 4. So the -3 right here is the X. So I'm going to go find it on the X-axis. So I'm going to go over to -3. Here it is right here, right? Actually, let me change color so you can see. Okay, here's -3. And then I'm going to go and find the 4 on the Y-axis. So 4 is right here. Now, you won't be circling the numbers on your paper. I'm just circling them so you can see. So now I'm looking for those two green numbers. I'm looking for where they intersect. So here they are. Okay, so that's example 2 is where that dot is. Now, let's talk a little bit about why these, now that I've done 2 examples, let's talk about why these are called quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the reason that this side, this part is quadrant 1 is because it is all positive. So if you look at all these numbers down here are positive and all the numbers right here are positive. So this section, any numbers I have, this section right here, any numbers I have are going to be positive no matter what. So that's why it's the first quadrant, because it's always positive. And then it just goes in the counterclockwise. It goes over here for quadrant 2 because this still has positive numbers right here. And then we have negative numbers on the X. And then this is quadrant 3 and this is quadrant 4. So that's the order that they go in. So a lot of kids will say 1, 2, 3, 4 because that looks like the right order, but that's not correct. Remember, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Always remember where the 1 starts and then go in the opposite circle. Okay, now that we have those 2 graphed, let's graph one more, but it's going to be on a bigger graph. I need to go all the way up to 7. So let's do another graph. It's good to do a couple of graphs anyway. So this time I want my graph to go to at least 7. So I need it to be pretty big. Right, I'm just going to draw it there. Let me see, what was the... And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, draw this one here. Oops, that one might have gone a little bit too long. Okay, so I need it to go to 7 at least. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and then my top number almost got to 7. My graph isn't quite, my screen isn't quite big enough for 7. Okay, but I'm getting there. So I'm trying to make sure all my numbers, this is 0. I put little tiny 0 in the middle. And then, okay, here's my graph now. I got it all the way to 7 on both sides. And now I want to graph. Let's do this in a different color. This is example 3. I want to graph 0, -7. Okay, so this one I have a 0 on there. So you can see the 0 right here. This is actually, this spot right here is actually 0, 0. Okay, but we're not doing that one right now. You could write that down if you want to remember. We are doing 0 is the x and the y is -7. So if you have 0 in either the x or the y, your graph is going to be on one of the axes. So if the number is in the y section, then that's on the y axis. That's where I'm going to put my dot. Okay, so this is graphing 0, -7. Okay, so let's do a couple of other ones that aren't actually examples in your book, but let's go ahead and do a few of them. So if I had, so I'm not going to call this an example, I'm just going to graph it. If I had 5, 0, okay, so I'm going to work on some zeros here. The 5, the number is in the x part, so that means on the x-axis, I'm going to go to 5 and put a dot. And that's how you graph those. So the 0 is in the y-axis. So that means that on this y-axis, I'm at 0. See how I'm at 0 on the y-axis? Okay, so whatever, if it's in the x spot, you're putting it on the x-axis. If it's in the y area, you're putting it on the y-axis. Okay, so let's do this one on your own. Graph 4, 0. Okay, hit pause and go ahead and graph that. Okay, so the 4 is in the x spot, so you should have graphed it right here. I actually meant to put that in the y spot. Okay, let's try another one. How about 0, -2? Okay, go ahead and graph that one on your own. Okay, so the -2 is in the y spot. Remember, this is x, y. They're in alphabetical order, so easy to remember which one is which. And so if it's in the y spot, it's going to be on the y-axis. And so there's my -2 on the y-axis right here. Okay, so that's how you graph zeros, okay, if you have zeros in there. Okay, one more thing before we go on. In your book, it's going to tell you to graph things like we did here, but then it's going to say graph it and then tell, no, hold on, that's going to be our next section. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to our next section. Okay, the next one is going to give you the point, and then you have to tell it where the coordinates. So let's go ahead and make a new one. Let's see, this one doesn't have to be very big, maybe only 3. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Make sure you're putting the numbers on top of the lines. The negative part does not go on the line, the number goes on the line when you're doing negatives, except for going down here. Now you see how my negatives are on the line. Okay, and then I'll draw a little 0. Okay, so if I had a point right, right here, I'm going to draw it kind of big so that y'all can see it. Okay, and then I'm going to label this A. Let's do a couple of them. Let's do one here. I'll label that one B, and put one here, and I'm going to label that one C. Okay, so let's tell the coordinates for A, B, and C, and also tell what quadrant it's in. So that's part of doing the quadrants. Okay, so A, I'm going to make my little parentheses. They do have to have parentheses. If you leave those off, you're going to lose points for not putting those, okay? So first, you always want your X and then your Y. So I'm going to go to my X-axis here. Right, this is my X-axis. And I'm going to look at where the A is. The A is at 4. So over here, I'm going to put 4 where the X is. And then I'm going to look at the Y-axis. Remember, this is the Y-axis. And see where that one is. So that one's at -3. So I'm going to put -3 there. So that's how I write my quadrant. I mean, my coordinate point, or my ordered pair. It has lots of words for it, okay? So this can be an ordered pair. I don't know why it's doing right there. Or it could be a coordinate. Oh, I see why it's doing that. Okay. So either one of these, ordered pair or coordinate. Okay, and then it wants to know what quadrant. So it's saying which quadrant is this A in. So remember, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So you would write quadrant 4. And that's your answer for A. Okay, let's look at B. Okay, I want an ordered pair with X first and then Y. Go ahead and try this one on your own. And go ahead and try C also. And then come back to me. So hit pause and write out B and C. Okay, now that you're back, I hope you wrote down which quadrant they were in also. We're going to talk about that. So let's look at B. I'm going to change to blue here. I want the X first, so I'm going to go down and look at the X-axis. You do not need to draw all these arrows. I'm just doing that to help you see them, okay? So X is going to be 1, and then the Y, looking across at the Y, is going to be 2. Okay, so that's what you should have had written for B was 1, 2. And then our quadrant is going to be 1. So there's your answer for B. Okay, see, and you only write this quadrant if the directions say to write the quadrant. Okay, so C, now C, I'm going to do X, Y. But C is different because it's on one of the lines, right? So this is my X-axis, right? So on the X-axis is -3. I'm going to put that in place of the X. But my Y-axis is right here. It's not at one of these numbers. It's not 1, 2, or 3, or -1 or -2. It's right here, so it's at 0. The Y is 0. And then when it asks what quadrant, that is actually not in a quadrant because it's on a line. So instead of saying which quadrant, I'm just going to write X-axis. Okay, and I can tell that it's on the X-axis because the number, not the 0, the number is in the X spot. Okay, and that's it for today on these. So hopefully you can get, understand this and get it down. And then the quiz over this is super easy, and I have a short quiz for it when we come back from the holidays. But you will be doing a worksheet, some homework tonight, and a worksheet. Okay, that's it. Thanks, kids.